Don Lemon will return to CNN this morning on Wednesday. His absence was reportedly to clear his head after making some unwise statements about 2024 presidential candidate Nikki Haley being not in her prime. CEO Chris Licht said in an email to employees Monday night that, quote, "I sat down with Don and had a frank and meaningful conversation. He has agreed to participate in formal training as well as continuing to listen and learn. We take this situation very seriously."
Formal training?
What is the formal training that helps a man in his 50s realize that it's not appropriate to tell a woman that she's past her prime in a political context based on her reproductive viability?
This is just what you say when someone screws up, right? You say, oh, they're learning, they're healing, or I guess the network is healing, they're going to be seminared to death, which is not something I love. Look, he's a commentator. He has his job is to have takes. He had a really bad take. If all he has is bad takes, then I think you're just supposed to question the value of this employee. But that was a bad take. I don't know that he needs to be like re-educated in a.
Okay, I'm kind of with you, but also, what's the alternative? Are we supporting a kind of cancel culture by saying that Don Lemon, the only thing that can happen here is for him to be fired for?
No, I'm not saying he should be fired. I mean.
Just accept
maybe I am saying that because I don't think he's a very good commentator, but I'm not saying he should be fired over this. He should just say, "I'm sorry, that was really stupid."
Well, what's interesting is I'm going to read a little bit more of this statement.
I mean, we're not going to move on because it's funny to talk about, but the world should move on.
I'm going to read a little bit more of the statement from the CNN CEO because it seems like even in these contexts, there is a recognition that there's a way that cancel culture, where these people keep making these mistakes in the air, can lead to these organizations having to basically fire everyone and do these massive overhauls almost every week, and that they're trying to figure out a way to orient themselves in the midst of, Me Too culture, accountability culture, whatever, that insulates them against every one of these moments leading to a potential firing or a Jeffrey Toobin situation. So what he said is, it's important to me that CNN balances accountability with fostering a culture in which people can own, learn, and grow from their mistakes. To that end, Don Lemon will return. So, I in theory, agree with that. I agree with the idea that I want a world where people can make a mistake, they can err, they can actually figure out where they went wrong and not keep making the same mistake again.
Yeah, that's the goal of getting around cancel culture, is to rehabilitate wrongdoing rather than punish unto the fifth generation as we do currently.
And it's the goal of restorative justice, and a lot of people on the left have long been saying, what does it mean if we want to rehabilitate people who have, gone to jail because they've committed a property crime,
but not people who made the okay sign. It doesn't make any sense.
Exactly.
It's totally incoherent.
Exactly. Now the difference is people who have gone to jail have done some accountability and penance. If they've done the crime, they've paid. Mm-hmm. They've done the crime, they've paid their time. They paid their time, whatever.
Yeah.
But in these situations, it's like, well, how do you hold somebody accountable when the way they've erred is so far short of anything they would be criminally liable for? And frankly, in the grand scheme of even news mess ups, when you do have Jeffrey Toobins and people who have been abusive in the workplace and these kinds of things, what does that even look like for someone like Don Lemon other than a conversation?
Yeah, and it remains the case that, social media is just very poorly calibrated to respond to an incident of wrongdoing or, again, a bad view. Again, in this instance, he said something that was stupid. He didn't abuse anyone. He didn't engage in, he said something dumb. That's it. Social media is not well calibrated to respond to people saying something dumb with the appropriate level of outrage and condemnation. Social media, just in general, does not respond to things with the appropriate level of condemnation, which is how you get things like, someone sending a careless tweet before they get on the plane being treated like this is the greatest crime since, some horrible plague on humanity.
The woman who famously tweeted before she took off, "I'm going to Africa. I hope I don't get AIDS."
Just kidding, I'm white.
Was that part of it too?
Yeah. But what she actually meant was totally contrary to what that tweet said.
Yeah, she was trying to call out her own privilege or something like that. Yeah. But by the time she landed, the tweet had gone around the world. She was fired, and there was this whole discourse about whether or not that was the level of censorship, that was the level of response that we want for that level of tweet, and what social media does in these contexts. At the same time, there have been people who have aired, who have been given another chance, and who continue to air. Whoopi Goldberg got in a lot of trouble for her comments last year about how the Holocaust, World War II, was a white people issue, saying that Jewish people were white, et cetera. She humbly apologized. They talked about it on the show. She did a media circuit expressing her understanding and consultation solemnly with members of the Jewish community. And then she doubled down and said something very similar again recently. We saw people like, we just were discussing Roseanne Barr, how she made her comment or tweet about Valerie Jarrett years ago during the Obama administration about her being looking like someone from Planet of the Apes or whatever. She first said, I didn't even know she was black. She then went on to say that she apologized. But the apology now, in retrospect, doesn't seem like it necessarily was doing the work. If now she's doing the media tour again, saying that
I don't agree with that.
No, that's fine. She doesn't have to apologize. And maybe you don't care that maybe she should never have been forced to apologize. But the point is, if we're saying that accountability means that people apologize, and you see someone like Whoopi Goldberg repeat her mistakes, or Roseanne say, well, actually, I'm not sorry, well, that's why people don't want to forgive in the first instance. And I don't know what to do about that.
Yeah. We can get over our skis here a little bit. It's just people saying things. It's not like the greatest, most horrible thing to ever do to someone. I mean, we're holding, I guess, public commentators to very high bars, which maybe is fair. It's obviously it's not a job that everyone gets to have, so you better be darn good at it. But and again, I think substantively, the kind of analysis that Don Lemon brings to the situation, I'm not totally on board with it.
Yeah.
Again, he very recently tried to, get around the fact that one of his co-hosts had done what I thought was a good and important interview with a very important Republican official who is about to engage in the process of investigating Hunter Biden, the Bidens, et cetera. And his reaction to that was all wrong. It was to condemn that we're even discussing this or allowing this person to be interviewed. So it's more that kind of stuff.
I agree.
Than one mistake. I'm sure I've said things I didn't mean to say that way. You've probably done it maybe once or twice. Never.
There's a different standard here at the Hill, Robby. You and I mean it every single day.
You mean every word. All right. Well, a CNN insider told Fox News that Lemon has no defenders inside the network, and everyone is still pissed. Can I say that? I guess I just did. If he were to be forced out, it would probably be welcomed by a lot of people. They said, I think there's an array of people who maybe like him personally, not professionally. A second insider, when asked whether Lemon was well-liked, replied, not anymore, adding that absolutely he should go, but Lemon remains untouchable because he's part of a protected class.
Meanwhile, The View continued to criticize Nikki Haley yesterday. Whoopi Goldberg echoed some of Don Lemon's cringe comments, saying, you're not a new generation, you're 51, let's take a look.
It's time for a new generation of leadership.
You're not a new generation, you're 51. What are you talking about?
Compared to DC, that's a new generation.
Well, but it's not a new generation. She may be younger than most of those people, but her rhetoric is the same. She's saying the same BS, and I love the young kid, but you know what? The only way you're going to get younger people to run, dude, is if you're out there talking to people and saying run. Don't sit here and say, we need it to look like us. We know that, but we're not going to vote for people who don't have our best interests at heart, okay?
So, actually, this might surprise some people watching. I think Whoopi Goldberg was coming close to saying something that is substantively correct. She was not wording that correctly. Nikki Haley is, in her ideology and in her thinking, is actually not part of a new crop of Republicans because her views substantially match not even the current crop, but the former crop. She is a neoconservative at heart.
Do you think that's what Whoopi meant?
I don't know whether that, but she almost said that by talking about, what does Nikki Haley talk about? Now, I think what Nikki Haley what she was saying is that Nikki Haley is just like Trump or all the Trump people because she's carried water for them or something, which is not actually accurate. Again, her views are pre-Trump. which are not in step with the Republican Party at all, which is why I see if you're going to make a criticism of her as not really representing a new generation of leadership, she represents an old generation of leadership. Yeah. Not because she is old, but because the views she has are out of step with what the Republican Party is. That's the criticism. Now, that's not exactly what she kind of almost accidentally said that there. It's not really what she was saying. And Don Lemon had no idea about that. I mean, he probably doesn't understand how her views are substantively different from Trump or pre-Trump in that way. So no one is making a thoughtful criticism there. But you can criticize her by saying that her views are not representative.
Yeah, no,
but I do take Alyssa Farah Griffin's point that, yes, especially for D.C., 51 is not old. It's not old given the current people who run us.
In any universe for any job in the world.
Yeah.
51 is just not old. So, I mean, I hear the argument you're making. I'm just not confident that if that is what Whoopi Goldberg is trying to say, that's even germane. Because remember, this whole thing started because Nikki Haley is trying to draw a literal chronological contrast between herself and the gerontocracy, and the Bidens and the Trumps and the Feinsteins and all of them who are very old in Congress, but namely, obviously, the people who are running for president. It is about chronological age. Don Lemon then decided to go and say, well, to try to insulate Joe Biden for some reason, who is in fact old, whatever you think about him, by saying, well, Nikki Haley isn't that young either. And the only metric by which that makes sense is counting her eggs. Yeah. It's ridiculous. Yeah. So all of this is just getting very far afield. It's unbelievably absurd. I wish people were making substantive arguments like the ones that you're making about the content of what's coming out of these people's mouths. A lot of conservatives love these days to, I think, misappropriate the Martin Luther King's content of your character speech, which was not about colorblind racism and pretending that racism doesn't exist and not talking about it in school curriculum, but in fact actually substantively looking at what people do and how they behave in the world and not discriminating on some of the basis of their skin, which was what was actually happening, what Martin Luther King was actually fighting against. And to that vein, we would have a better political discourse if people were focused on the things that were coming out of people's mouths, whether what their records were and what they stood for and what they would fight for with respect to the American people. None of that is happening. We've just done 3 laps around Don Lemon in this crazy mishigas. And I will be more than happy to discover that CNN has decided, either because they've replaced Don Lemon or because they've just corrected and put him on the right path, that they've committed to substantive conversations about politics for once.
Amen. All right, that does it for us for today. Tomorrow on Rising, my colleague at Reason Magazine, Elizabeth Nolan Brown, will join us to talk about a very high-stakes Supreme Court case that's going on right now. They heard oral arguments in the Google case. Won't want to miss that.
Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. And for those of you who prefer to listen while you're on the go, we are now available anywhere you listen to podcasts.
See you later.
Bye-bye.